Hello, welcome to Willow and Moon. I'm Sam, and today I want to talk about Whippet Wisdom. So letting go of perfection and finding the peace in the messiness, and I suppose really picking your battles. So one of the things that I've noticed since having Luna in my life, I am going to do a video while she's next to me, but at the moment I'm finding that she doesn't sleep properly if she's next to me. So I put her in a den or a crate and she has a really good sleep. So one day we're getting there where she's starting to fall asleep, but she just keeps being woken up by children, and we are in the school holidays. So one thing that I'm trying to let go of is that myth of trying to get it right. So I know I'm really hard on myself. I'm one of those people, and I don't know if that comes from just personality types, the fact that I'm INFJ, the fact that I'm got a bit of a ADHD, autism, so ADHD type brain, childhood. It could be lots of different things, but I'm really hard on myself, and I don't really like to do a bad job in things. I like to do things really well, and if I can't do it well, it frustrates me and I'll either give up or not even bother trying. So when Luna came along, I had this pressure to be a really great mum, dog mum, a dog parent, getting it right all the time, making sure that I think the first thing is making sure that she's happy, but also there's so much advice out there, there's so many different things that people were saying to me that I would always feel like I was getting it wrong because there's so many contradictions. It's like, well, I do this, and then someone else would say, well, no, actually you should be doing this. And I was struggling with her a little bit because she's a puppy, and you don't really look into the puppy stage when you first buy the breed that you like. So I was finding that she was biting us, biting everything, running away with all of our clothes, our socks, our shoes in particular, the insoles on my gardening shoes, which are a complete mess now. She's completely wrecked the garden. What else was she doing that was quite difficult? I think it was just the fact that she was just non-stop and into everything, and there was never really any relief, and I was starting to look forward to nap times, which makes me a little bit sad. Now I'm starting to miss her when she's sleeping, which I think is a good sign. It just shows how far we've come, and things don't last forever. But I think the thing that I was really trying to be was the perfect, in my eyes, dog mum. And that kind of runs on into life as well, having a tidy, clean home, having nice things, being a good parent, whatever that means to you. What does it mean to me? I think the main thing is that they are happy, but that just is really difficult, because what does happiness mean? And also, how much responsibility should you hold for the happiness or the feelings of somebody else? Of course, if you're causing problems or causing chaos, then that's a different thing. But just feeling guilty that they weren't entertained constantly, were they getting enough sleep? Was I feeding them properly? Were they having fresh fruit and veg? Were they having enough vegetables? Were they having home cooked meals? Were we going out enough? Was I entertaining them enough? It seemed to just be exactly the same with Luna. So I recognise that pattern now, that I was just being really hard on myself and expecting way too much. And there is no right way. There is no perfect way. We are human. And what I found, and I think what Luna's done, is that there's an immediate reaction to whatever you're doing. So she's a really good barometer for how things are in the home. I think children, it happens over a slower period of time, so you almost don't notice it as easily. Now that my children are 9 and 11, I feel like all of the work that we put in when they were young is really paying off dividends. They're really kind, they're polite, they're not moany, or they don't keep on about anything, they don't expect everything, they're quite content, they can entertain themselves. We don't have loads of screens and things like that. We don't have the iPads and all the phones and stuff. There are certain things that you just notice from being out with other people's children, or just observing in general the way that they are and the way that my children are, and you start to think, okay, I think I'm doing okay. Not perfect, and I don't expect them to be perfect. I don't expect them to never moan or never keep on or never be sad or have emotions, but just, I don't know, they're just lovely, lovely kids. They're just amazing, and hopefully well-rounded and hopefully happy and content. And that's what I want for Luna. So she shows me a lot more quickly. It's taken a long time with my children, and you don't always notice when you're in the midst of it. But with a dog, I feel like it's right there in your face. You almost can't ignore it. And I really love that about having a dog. It's helped me reflect on the way I am and the way I am with my family, with my husband, with my children. And she's been really instrumental in that. And so I think one of the things is that when Luna's not responding in the moment, when she is going after the shoe and she's not dropping it, when she's, you know, completely wild, when she's bitten us again, she's teething. So that's dramatically stopped. You'll be pleased to know she's 5 months and she's hardly ever biting now, which is great. That's a massive big deal. But just knowing that you're not failing, you're not doing anything wrong, you're just human and you're in the moment, and these things still go wrong. No matter how much effort you put in, no matter what you do, stuff still goes wrong. And there's kind of, I think that's the medicine in the messiness, allowing that to happen. Like I said, she's completely destroyed the garden. At the beginning, it was like, well, let's keep her off it, and freaking out, and my husband with his dahlias, and just, keep the dog away. It's really, really nerve-wracking, and you just think, you can't live like that. You can't live where you're constantly frightened of her wrecking things. Just embracing her puppy stage and knowing that it won't last forever. We'll be able to have flowers next year, and it's more important to feel peace in that messiness, if that makes sense. So I've talked a little bit about this before, but what Luna mirrors back to me, again, it's really obvious with a dog, not so much with children. It takes time to notice these patterns, but I think with a dog it is immediate. So I've noticed that, you know, there are a few little pitfalls or bad habits that we were getting into. So with a dog, I think watching these behavioural programs, I do love those, you tend to see how people get into these bad habits, because maybe, and it's the same with children, maybe they're out in public and their dog is acting up. So what they do, maybe it's really barky or maybe it's reacting, what they'll do is they'll distract it with a treat. And you can understand how that kind of happens. But of course, what you're doing is you're reaffirming that bad behaviour and then treating the dog for it. Same with children, you know, if they're being whatever and then you give them a treat after, it's almost like, well, I can behave how I like. And if you don't follow through, if you don't keep going, if you're not consistent with that, then they know the ways around things, and that starts showing up later on. So some of the things we were doing was kind of saying things like time out as a bit of a kind of stop her in her tracks thing, right? You'll go into time out, using her crate a little bit like punishment, like a naughty step. That sounds really horrible now, but it wasn't an angry thing. It was just, you know, I think I saw it on the dog program, Dogs Behaving Badly, with that Graham guy. What he was doing was, whatever the behavior was with this dog, that he would take it away, put it in the utility room. So if you behave that way, you can't spend time with the family. So that's my way of thinking. But what I've learned is that dogs don't have that guilt thing. So we're trying to humanize the language that we're using, and Luna's like, really know what's going on here. And it kind of wasn't working. If it worked, great. Didn't really. She kind of stopped sometimes, but then she'd do it immediately again. So to me, it might be a short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution. So what I found was sometimes she did drive us absolutely crazy, and I was using the crate as a reset for her. So I noticed that her nervous system was overstimulated, and so putting her in her crate was enough to enable her to just calm down when she came out. There was no discipline, it was not because of that, it was more thinking about her and how she was feeling, and knowing that puppies particularly get overstimulated, and that's where a lot of the bad behaviour comes in. I noticed she was biting more, I noticed she was just more energetic, and to begin with I thought we had to wear her out, but it turns out that she just needed more rest and more time to settle, you know, reset her nervous system, stimulate that vagus nerve to allow her to rest and digest. Crucial in everybody's life, so not just hers but ours as well, and this is why she's a mirror. The other thing I noticed, that when we didn't raise our voice, of course you're human, you're going to do it every now and then, no, don't do that. When we didn't raise our voice and we just gently guided her away, so it's more like, come on, down Luna, the response was unbelievable. She was calmer and we felt calmer. It sounds ridiculously obvious, but it just isn't in the moment. And notice that with kids too, they don't really respond to you shouting and bawling. They tend to zone out, or just they become immune to it. So I've noticed over the last few years that I definitely shout a lot less. I was never a shouter before kids, but when you say it 15 times and they still don't hear, and also trying to be heard over them, yeah, it just doesn't work. That's what I found. It just doesn't work. So it's more about rewarding good behaviour and discouraging the bad behaviour. So gently discouraging, gently leaning them away, and then giving them something that is allowed or is okay. So I think the deeper message and the whole point of this video is that perfection isn't the goal, connection is. So it's about creating a bond, whether it's with your children, with your family, and of course with Luna. It's more about the connection that we have rather than having everything perfect. So the flower bed's a mess, she's chewing on a cushion, my shoe has now got holes in. You don't feel like you've got the same amount of time that you did have before, and you start to almost grieve that routine that you had before. It feels really strange when something new happens, when things change. And I've started to realise that the minutes and the hours of the day are what make up your life. And how do you want them to look? Do you want it to be a constant battle because you've got this unattainable vision of what you think life should be? Social media has not helped with that in the slightest. You know, we all see these highlight reels of people's lives and everything looks amazing, and it's just not true. But I feel like we set ourselves these unattainable goals. Maybe people were harsh with you when you were a child and you always felt like their vision and their goals weren't attainable, or maybe you worked in a job that you felt that way, that these targets you were never able to meet them. Whatever it may be, I think that's the deeper message here. It's more about how can we lean into the human side, the messy side, the emotion, the feeling of things, and holding it gently with grace for yourself, with grace for other people, without being so hard. You find that if you're hard on yourself, then you probably have high expectations for other people. And the more I've let that go, the better I feel about myself. Not that that means that you don't have boundaries and that people are allowed to treat you any way that they like. What I found is that I have dealt with that by either withdrawing yourself physically or emotionally, and just allowing yourself to feel the things without judging yourself about it. So being really kind and holding space. It allows you to be kind and have empathy for the people that possibly hurt you too, because you have that empathy and the kindness to yourself. And I think that rolls on to everything. That's what I've been learning through this healing journey. It's been really tough. It's been a lot of self-reflection, a lot of really spotlighting stuff that doesn't feel comfortable, a lot of grieving about relationships you feel like you should have or would like to have and haven't got. but I think overall it leads to compassion and empathy, and I'm less reactive, or that reaction that I do have doesn't last as long, and there's no kind of grudges anymore. It's just kind of, oh, okay, I see the pattern, and move on. Whether that person's in your life or whether they're not, it's just about moving on, and moving on in the moment too, embracing the mess, embracing the chaos, and having grace for yourself. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I feel like Luna's teaching me so much, and there is a lot of wisdom in the animals around us that we can really learn from, and children too. Let me know if you resonated with anything in this video. I'd love to kind of build a little bit of a conversation around these topics that I'm making videos on. I'd love to hear what you think, and I really look forward to seeing you next time. If you did like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe share with someone this might help. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.